I was in London a few years ago, and I was in East London, in a place called West Ham. And I was walking down the street, and the street is just covered in kebab shops and brown people. You can't see any white people almost anywhere. And I went into this pub, and the pub was full of all these white boomers, and they all had Cockney accents. And they were very nice, and we got chatting and so on, and they were telling me about their children and their grandchildren. Some of them were quite old, and all of their children had moved away. Many of them had actually moved here. Some had moved to other parts of Britain or other parts of Europe. And I was thinking how sad it is that that particular Cockney identity of East London, the old white working class, it will no longer exist in a few generations, because the old people will die out and the young people have all been replaced by Pakistanis, by various other brown ethnicities and some blacks and so on. And so now they no longer exist. That particular people, their culture, their way of speaking, their particular mentality, this has been eviscerated. This is a tragedy that is happening in various aspects of my race across our civilization. Entire communities are being utterly gutted and replaced and diluted. And for me to not care about that and say, well, what's the difference? An Indian or a black person, they're just as Australian as me. They have the exact same value as me. I should care about them the exact same. That would be to deprive my people of genuine love, which is what's necessary for them to be preserved. My ancestors, for thousands of years, have fought. They have fought in wars. They have engaged in settler colonialism, going across the world to build a new country and so on, to pass that down to me. And I would be pissing in their face if I was to just allow it to be thrown away and not stand in opposition to what is happening to my people. Where my country, and not just, people could say, it would be one thing if it was just happening in Australia, but I could go back, and everyone said, go back to England if you don't like it. And I went back to England, and in England, everyone was English. And there was a way to perpetuate the culture of my ancestors there. But the exact same thing, maybe even worse, is happening there. I have nowhere to go. Everywhere where my people were previously the dominant culture, the dominant people, where we ruled our own countries and we maintained our traditions and our way of life, every single place where that is occurring in the entire world is being systematically attacked by this agenda, this anti-white agenda of forcing quote-unquote diversity, which means replacing them with foreign cultures and foreign peoples. So I have nowhere to run. I am forced to fight. If they didn't want me to become so racist, if they didn't want me to become so aggressive and hateful, they shouldn't have taken away everywhere that I could run to. But that's what they have done. And so they're forcing me to fight. I've got nowhere to go. And the same thing would happen to any ethnic group. You see with the Palestinians and the Israelis fighting over kilometers of dirt. You're seeing the Ukrainians and the Russians massacring each other over kilometers of dirt. This is the universal human condition. That people are not willing to just throw away hard-fought self-determination. They establish their country, their way of life, their people are in charge of a particular territory. That has been hard-won, always in some kind of war or battle. And then their ancestors have invested blood, sweat, and tears for hundreds and thousands of years, in some cases, in that particular place, to make it theirs. And they are not going to go down without a fight when that happens, when someone else wants to barge in and take over that space. Because the reality is that the world isn't big enough for everyone. There's a limited amount of space. Everyone can't get everything that they want. This is a fucking totally utopian fantasy. At some point, you have to say, no, this is mine. No one else can have this. This is going to be the country that my people have, that is going to be the place where my way of life is perpetuated, so that my children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and so on, have a country in which people like them who share their identity are in charge, so that they are safe. I don't want my grandchildren and great-grandchildren becoming a persecuted, potentially, minority in the country their ancestors built. That is just simply not acceptable. And that is the destiny that, if the current trajectory of things is allowed to continue, that's their destiny. I would be a shit grandparent or shit great-grandparent if I allowed that to happen. And I love them more, even though they don't exist yet, I love them more than I love these fucking random Indians coming in, who have their own country, by the way, and who, frankly, I don't like them. I don't like the way they smell, the way they look, I don't like their culture, I don't like how they talk, I don't like their way of life. And I have the right not to like them. They might not like me too. I don't care whether they like me or don't like me. I have the right not to like them. I don't have to like everyone. I want to have a country in which people like me are in charge, where my culture is maintained, where my way of life is maintained. And I want that to be passed down to my children. And I don't care if I have to fight for it and some people have to get hurt, if that's what's necessary.